Hi, thank you all for joining me today. My name is Ryan Schwarz. I will be doing a speech over performance-enhancing drugs in teen and adult athletes. So firstly, I think one thing a lot of people don't consider is just the sheer amount of enhanced athletes in today's society. And within this speech, I'll actually be talking about the effects of performance-enhancing drugs on the body, athletes that have utilized these drugs, the difference between a natural and enhanced athlete, and then I'll go over a short timeline of performance-enhancing drugs and just kind of the advancements that we've seen in the last 10 to 20 years. And as someone that has competed in team sports and individual sports, I feel as though I have a decent grasp on what PEDs do to the human body. So firstly, let's start by addressing the effects of PEDs on the human body. A lot of people tend to think it's only physical, but it's actually also psychological. I have a quote from USDA.org that actually states, "There is an increased aggressiveness and sexual appetite, sometimes resulting in abnormal sexual and criminal behavior. This is often referred to as roid rage." The psychological aspects of drug use in adolescents can actually be depression and anxiety. And although it is not as heightened in adults, it is still seen as a side effect. And furthermore, all people can see that, and I have another quote from USDA.org, a withdrawal from anabolic steroid use can actually be associated with depression and in some cases suicide. And one thing we can all kind of view at the gym is that these side effects can become very present in one's eyes while training. And when we consider the physical effects of PEDs, we can easily view those. Although most people take these to gain a competitive edge, a lot of the times they don't actually consider the side effects. And adolescents that utilize these PEDs can actually see that their growth is stunted, and then they actually disrupt the chain of development in their puberty cycle. Again, from that USDA.org source. And keeping this in mind, we can also see that men can sometimes become impotent, women can disrupt their menstrual cycle, and adolescents can change their entire development path. Furthermore, we'll talk about a notorious cycle of PED use in competitive sports. I'm sure we all know who Barry Bonds is, famous for his home run record in a single season. And what a lot of people don't actually know is that he was a very notorious user of PEDs. He's actually known for having a very built frame and strong, broad shoulders. And the reason why these shoulders are so key is because having strong shoulder tendons in baseball is very beneficial for hitting home runs and hitting them further and farther faster. A good quote I have actually comes from KDnews.com and states that during 1998, Winstrol was the most popular steroid which Barry Bonds used allegedly. Amongst bodybuilders, Winstrol is the exceptional type of anabolic steroid to build gigantic shoulder tendons. Again, this being very key for Barry Bonds as he is a baseball player, and having strong shoulders obviously helps you hit the ball further and faster. And although he never outright admitted to this, his colleagues eventually fessed up. They actually used undetectable steroids, that way when he did drug tests, they were never found. Another quote from KD News actually states, "The book called Game of Shadows by Mark Finaru Wada and Lance Williams who claims that Barry Bonds used several different steroids for attaining the all-time home run record. These were the steroids used by the bodybuilders, as well as the types specifically made for Barry Bonds, which were undetectable in a drug test." And now that we have a clear understanding of PEDs and how they can affect competitive sports, let's now discuss the difference between, say, a Barry Bonds and a Jacob deGrom. When we think of PEDs, most often we just think of having strong shoulders, being very mass and vascular, and having a lot of strength. But oftentimes there's a lot more factors than that. A natural athlete can actually not include as much volume in their exercises. And a quote from TigerFitness.com states that natties cannot use as much volume. This is because of the negative hormonal reactions when you go just too far. When you deplete all of your glycogen stores and other goodies that fuel training, your body will produce more cortisol, and when enhanced, cortisol is inhibited. And the reason being we don't want more cortisol is because that's actually the number one stress hormone. And when you have heightened levels of stress, you cannot train as long, you cannot train as hard, and you're just completely depleted of energy. And another difference between an enhanced and natural is that an enhanced athlete can actually recover faster, they can actually train harder, and then they can carry that strength and energy into competitive sports. And another thing that they also have is that they can actually gain muscle faster, and they don't even have to train as hard or have a strict diet to see these gains. Another quote from Tiger Fitness actually states that when steroid users overeat, more of the food that they use is fueled for muscle than it is for fat, once again giving them an advantage. Furthermore, we will be discussing the timeline of PEDs in society and how they've increased a lot in the last 10 to 20 years. And so the ease of access of these PEDs has actually increased exponentially, as well as we've seen advancements in this field. And with SARMs being a great example, or selective androgen receptor modulators becoming so accessible, it's actually allowed for average people to have these drugs shipped directly to their home. When they were first discovered in the 90s, they actually landed on the WADA, or World Anti-Doping Agency list for banned substances in competitive sports. This, again, from my USDA.org source. And when steroids were actually first discovered in the 1930s, the advancements we've seen within the following decades were very exponential. And with all these steroids, especially SARMs, becoming commercially available within the last 10 to 20 years, it's actually allowed just about anybody to use them. And another quote I have from drugabuse.org says they've become commercially available to just about anybody, feeding a new pool of uneducated people the choice to use them. And then in conclusion, I believe that PEDs have been around for a while, and they have allowed a wide range of people to actually utilize them. We chased after Barry Bonds with his crazy home run records and how he claimed he'd done them naturally. We kind of discussed the difference between how Arnold Schwarzenegger is extremely different from Joe Schmo at the gym, obviously from those PEDs. We also talked about the effects these drugs have on the human body, not only physical, but actually also psychological. And then we went over a short timeline of these PEDs and just how fast they've advanced in the last 10 to 20 years. That is all I have for you all today, and I hope you all had a good time and learned something new. Thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you.